We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email john@nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
Just a question of taste with you, well, you've gone sour. You want the world plus everything, but you won't work an hour. And now your questions of guilt creeping and you're going buying flowers. You throw away the dreams we had, boy. I won't allow it. I said we're gonna fall out. Let's see you get out. I think we're gonna fall out. So shut your mouth.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, the professionals, as always on a Sunday, and it's welcome to Mitch and to Stu. Evening, chaps.
Good evening.
All right, Steve.
Good to see you. I'll keep an eye on the Aston Villa Manchester United game. Nicely poised at 1-1. Wouldn't be a bad result for us. I'd still rather Villa won this tonight. I've got to be perfectly honest, because let's just keep right on the coattails of Manchester United. It gives us something to play for this season. But 1-1 wouldn't be a bad result, especially after West Ham got whopped 6-0 off Arsenal today. So, yeah, interesting weekend. And, of course, an interesting weekend for Newcastle with a 3-2 win at Forest. Before we get into what we've got to talk about tonight, I've got a couple of topics we want to discuss. Also want to mention that I have found this video, the Long Sands video, for the opening tune that we normally have for NUFC Matters, Worlds Collide. And it does feature a famous Newcastle ex-footballer. So I will play it at some point, either during the show or at the end of the show. So I've had a few people asking for it. And people asking, are the Long Sands ever going to get back together? Watch this space. Watch this space. I have had a chat with a band over the last few weeks, and there are irons in the fire. So definitely something to look forward to if you like their music. They've got 2 albums up on Spotify and Apple Music and all other music download areas. So get yourself on there and listen to them, and I'll keep you updated moving forward. But let's talk football first of all, Mitch. And yeah, a 3-2 win against Notts Forest, 7 points out the last 9, 2 away games, Villa and Forest, the home game against Luton. You know, it only gets better if you win all 3. We know what happened last week. Did they exercise the ghost a little bit last night, do you think, of that defeat against Forest over Christmas?
I think last night was all about the result first. You get the 3 points and pick over the bones about how you've got them. I still think there was a couple of things that I'm sure Eddie would want to improve on. And I think some subtle shifts, which certainly reaped reward in the first half, but maybe less so in the second half, in terms of how we were set up and how we played to try and get the best out of some of the players, and maybe get Bruno further up the pitch. And that seemed to pay off. That was an interesting move to see. Trippier occasionally shift into midfield, almost allowed Bruno to go forward, and almost were playing with a back 3 really, rather than a back 4 at times. And I think, yeah, we'll take the 3 points, focus on the result, pick over the bones of the performance. But I think we showed a nice bit of resilience as well, given that Forest came back, or did we let them come back? I think I'll let people decide that for themselves. But again, like against Luton, one thing we've showed is that this isn't a team that's going to give up. This isn't a team we're just going to chuck the towel in. There's a lot of teams wouldn't have come back from a late equaliser in the first half like that. Similarly, there's a lot of teams wouldn't have come back from 2-4 down to home against Luton. So I think you've got to look for all the positives you can and carry them forward to the next game.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, the man making headlines was Bruno yesterday. Stu, 2 wonderful goals. Me and you making headlines this morning as well. Baldy's are number 1 love gods in the headlines today. Nothing further from the truth as those people can probably agree with. But yeah, fantastic result last night, mate. And Bruno, 2 great goals.
Fabulous. And just what Mitch alluded to there, the little tweak in formation allowed him a bit further up the field where he can do the damage. The first goal was he credited the training ground move. He mentioned Mad Dog, didn't he? And then the second one was just individual, I wouldn't say brilliance, but it just showed the composure he's got, the vision he's got, and how confident he is at the moment just to take a shot from there, because it's not often you see Bruno shooting from that far out. And I think the way they had Trippier played it in midfield, especially the first half, we lost our way a bit once they equalised the first goal, but quickly restored their composure, and I think they thoroughly deserved the win. Yes, we could sit and analyse it and find faults in just about everything. They're not going to win every game 8-0, are they? So for me, 3 points away from home is always a good win, always good in the Premier League. And if you look at since the turn of the year, take out the Liverpool and the dodgy decisions against them, we're a couple of minutes away from drawing against Man City, and we've done very well in the other games, haven't we? So there's many reasons to be positive, many reasons to look forward to the rest of the season. And I think the squad now, with them getting extra time together, training instead of just like on a plane and playing a game, back, rest, they're actually spending more time together, and you can see the effect it's having, and there seems to be more fighting for each other over the last couple of weeks. And I think with the not new faces, but people returning from injury, it's given them all a boost. And now there is competition for places, so naturally people up the game. But 3 points away from home, can't knock it at all. Very happy.
Gary Milligan's asking if Mitch wants to manage me and Stu, the new right said Fred.
Yeah.
I'll chuck this out there about yesterday. Obviously, didn't get a chance to go yesterday. There was another engagement that I had to be at, but I did manage to get back in time to watch Newcastle play on Sky. As always, ludicrous commentary, ludicrous quotes. I'm not going to go into it, otherwise I'll be accused of misogyny. But there was some ludicrous commentary and comments by male and female pundits yesterday. And for me, a bias again shown towards Newcastle United, which is getting beyond a joke now. I mean, literally, it's coming to the point where I think most people on Tyneside are switching off the commentary, putting on BBC Radio Newcastle and listening to Ando and Razor. And yeah, it's a couple of minutes behind, but it's probably the best thing to do, because that way you're getting a bit of sensible commentary. And it beggars belief. It really does. We went from it not being a penalty to it could be a penalty to it was definitely a penalty, all in the space of 15, 20 minutes, after the incident. Look, I've seen them given and I've seen them not given. Yesterday wasn't given. They balanced themselves out over the course of the season. The amount of comments made about Dan Burn from pre-match to during the match to after the match is crazy. Eddie Howe was asked by the interviewer before the match about the issue when he'd already answered the questions at the press conference. The commentary team then constantly badgered, went on and on and on about Dan Burn. And then after the game, Eddie was asked about Dan Burn and Tino Livramento again. I mean, I don't understand what Eddie Howe's got to do, to put this to rest. And we were discussing in our WhatsApp group yesterday, and I think most of us agreed. Dan Burn, look, he can get caught out for pace, but he's got issues that people in front of him maybe aren't doing their job. There's players playing with injuries. Eddie Howe told us this on Friday night. Dan Burns had to play with he was playing through the pain barrier when he came back from a broken back. We've got Harvey Barnes, who, in Eddie's own words, wouldn't be playing at the moment if we had a full squad to pick from. You've got Jacob Murphy, who is playing, far ahead of when he should be. Anthony Gordon hasn't trained all week, wouldn't normally have played, but because we're short, has had to play. So ultimately, the midfield that we're putting out there, they're not 100% at the moment. So that isn't helping the cause of the team, and of course, it's having a negative effect on poor Dan Burn. So it's not Dan Burn's fault, man, for God's sake. And I've seen, honestly, social media, it is ridiculous. And I went out on a proper offensive last night on Twitter. I went out and put a tweet out supporting Eddie Howe and just reminded people we're only 5 points away from where we were last season, despite all these injuries and despite the Champions League run that we had. So extra fixtures in the best cup competition in the world, and we're still only 5 points away from where we were last season. I mean, what more do people want? It rant over again, Mitch, but it just boils me urine, mate.
I've seen what everybody's been saying about commentary, and usually we got plenty to say about, depending on who we get on the commentary over here. We actually had Michael Bridges on co-commentary.
All right.
Yesterday.
Well, he does look north now.
And certainly there wasn't the drawn-out debate about Dan Burn. We didn't have it off of Keys and Graham. We didn't have it off of anybody in the commentary. So when I saw last night and this morning catching up on Twitter, people getting really angry about the way the commentary was going on back home, that was one time I was grateful not to have the UK commentary feed. Sometimes it's the other way around. But I think they love to have a story of some description that they can get their teeth into. And somebody has obviously decided that's the narrative for today. And they don't deviate from it. You can sometimes see it a million miles away. So if that's been going on, thankfully I've missed it. Also, wasn't it a penalty? Didn't really get 5 minutes over here. It was like, yep, check's done. Let's not talk about it. So it does make you wonder, do we have a little bit of agenda from certain individuals back at home? And how much is that tied into certain narratives the Premier League would like to have running? Because by gosh, for a team that nobody seems to like anymore, we're on telly enough. Why would that be? But it doesn't suit them for us to be winning games. It doesn't suit them for us to be comfortably taking things in our stride. They'd love it to be difficult. They'd love it to be a bump in the road. They'd love it to be something negative, drag something negative out of the whole situation. There's trouble in the back room. There's trouble with this player. There's issues with here, potential issues there. Why isn't he doing this? Why isn't he doing that? And that should have been a penalty. Do you not think that should have been a penalty? It does become tedious and trying. It's the kind of thing we spoke about pre-takeover, about how certain times there'll be a narrative that we just have to suck up. And there's nothing we can do about it. We just have to accept it's going to come every now and again. And make it all the sweeter when we pick the 3 points up and stick two fingers up to the rest of the world. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Stu, I mean, it is getting beyond a joke. I mean, you're in different parts of the world and you've had your own fair share of biased commentary, but it just seems to be getting worse and more blatant.
That's the thing, and it shows to me a lack of intelligence, because someone said it and they think, right, we'll run with this. But the thing with the Dan Burn, I mean, I flicked between the two channels, so like at half time I was listening to the Sky bit, and then at the end of the game as well. But yes, I get frustrated and I'm shouting and swearing at the TV and everything else when it's coming on it, because it's so petty. But for me it's born out of jealousy. And what we need is a semblance of common sense, but common sense isn't common anymore. And when you have people trying to say it's a penalty, you can say it enough times, but it doesn't make it a penalty. But for me, it's more trying to influence future games. And this thing with Dan Burn, that Alanga, if he's not the quickest, he's got to be one of the quickest players in the league. And I think Usain Bolt would have struggled to catch him. So you can't really blame Dan Burn for that. For me, that fault was at Dubravka, because he came out and then hesitated. Yeah, stay on your line, or you come out and take, get the ball, because he could have made it. But also Botman ended up ball watching as well. But it's easy, just go with the blame Dan Burn situation. But no one praises his crunching tackles or his headers or his positional sense. He's shown great strength of character to get through it. It was only a month ago that Trippier was getting the same sort of abuse from the same sort of people, and he's come out of it. Yes, he got rested for I think it was 1 or 2 games over the Christmas period, wasn't it? He got rested, but I think it was great that they played Dan Burn, and I thought he had a good game, to be honest. He's not going to get any quicker, so is that the only thing you can pick on him for? That he's not the fastest out there. They tweaked the formation maybe to suit Dan Burn, maybe just to say, right, I'm going to play you, I'll pick the team. I better not say Dave from heaven, because last time I said that he was watching. But someone on social media, or a few people on social media who just aren't happy unless they're complaining about something, he's now the lad that's going to get it. For me, there was more. There was worse performances in the Newcastle team than Dan Burns, but his play yesterday, I thought it was done for him the way that Miley sat deeper, the way Bruno come left. It was to give more, because Bruno sat in front of Burn for a little bit, and then the way they moved Trippier across as well. It put him in the middle, and Gordon came back, and I thought it was a great thing by Eddie Howe. Not to mention Anthony Gordon in the press conference when he was asked, he said he hasn't trained all week. He didn't say he wasn't playing. He just said he hasn't trained all week. So again, let people surmise what he's thinking. But what's he meant to say? Well, actually, he's trained a couple of times and he's going to be starting tomorrow. It was going to be surprised. But seeing you've asked nicely, Mr. Press Officer, I'm going to tell you. Of course, it's all gamesmanship. But getting back to Dan Burn, is he going to be part of our future squad? Absolutely he will. Is he going to be a starting left back next season? Probably not. But all you can ask for is when they cross that line with wearing, well, it was blue yesterday, but wearing the black and white strips representing Newcastle United, is to try your damnedest. And he does that every single game. So he'll come out of it. He showed signs of improvement yesterday, and I think he'll get better as the season goes on. So fair play to him.
Gutted, but Manchester United have scored. Cracking header by McTominay. 2-1 to Manchester United. 87 minutes on the clock. Same old Manchester United. Last minute goals again, but still time for Villa to get back in it. Let's hope they can find a way back into the game. Good evening, everybody in the chat. Over 300 watching already. Never take that for granted, but thank you very much for joining us. I must get this question in, lads, before I forget, because bearded guy on Twitter has been asking me to put this up. There we are, Bearded Meatball. He says, what do you think of this, Steve? Pretty spot on, if you ask me. Maybe a point to put to the lads this week. Luton's game at St James's Park had loads of English players on show, including Barkley, Oso, Mengi, Doughty, Adebayo, Trippier, Miley, Livramento, Barnes and Wilson. Perfect game for Southgate, you'd think. Where was he? At Ajax versus PSV to watch 33-year-old Jordan Henderson. It is an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, you do wonder why he went to watch Jordan Henderson. I mean, he's seen plenty of him, Mitch.
He constantly undermines himself with his actions. When he'll tell the press, I don't have favourites. I pick on form. I want to look at where I can add fresh blood into this squad. And then he does something like that. Then you know the kind of squad he's going to pick. You know, in his entire time, he's never made a exciting or a groundbreaking addition to the squad or taken a chance on someone. And when he does go to younger talent, he goes from places he knows very well, like Crystal Palace's youth system. Mm. And there's players who are involved with Palace who have been catapulted into the England team for doing very little. really, when there's players playing out their skin at other clubs, and because they don't fit whatever Southgate's idea of an England squad is, or they don't seem to play for the right club, or to have had the right history or the right background, he just seems to ignore, and certainly doesn't do anything innovative or risky. And I think that says it all. When you had a game like that at St James's with so many English players on display, in the so-called top league in the world, and a game that also went 4-4 and was all over the press. And where is he? He's off watching somebody he should know inside out to see how he trots out for his new club in Holland. But it is baffling. It certainly doesn't make sense to me. He rarely seems to want to venture to St James's Park, and that was usually if he was actually up watching somebody like Jordan Henderson, and that's sad. And like I say, he just constantly comes out with this claptrap in the media, and then his actions undermine what he says.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with you. I mean, strange decision, wasn't it, Stu, for him to go out there and watch Henderson?
Yeah, Anthony Gordon wasn't on that list either. On that tweet that you put up. So there's another English player you could put on. You've got to agree with Mitch, irrespective of what Southgate says. He does have favourites. I think the vast majority of us could pick the start 11, barring injuries, for the first game of the Euros for England. And it just smells of a closed shop, and that's it. They're in, and it would take something huge for him to drop someone like Jordan Henderson, and it's as if he's just justifying it. I'll go and watch you here, but I won't go and watch you in Saudi. Now you've made the decision to come back to Europe. There's a good boy. I'll come and say hello to you. You never know. Who knows what they got up to in Amsterdam after the game? But that's another story for another newspaper. But if Jordan Henderson's your answer to England in the Euros, and he knows what he can do, he doesn't have to prove himself. If he thinks that his position is up for grabs, he should be looking at other people, not looking at Jordan Henderson. He's not going to get any surprises from him, is he? So he's picked them often enough, and he's been in every squad. He's been fit. He's chosen them. So why not go and look at so many players? Is it because you're going to have to make changes and that scares them? But I know it's played on grass, but on paper, England have a pool of players that should win that championship. They really should. And if you look at the starting 11, all barring, I would say, a partner for Stones and centre half, you've probably got the best starting 11 in the championship as well. So now is the time you should be looking at other players to, like, surprise players. Players who haven't been in the squad, and think, right, could these be impact substitutes? Because, as I said, the start 11 just about picks itself now, doesn't it? He's been pretty consistent with who he's chose. So why would you go look at Jordan Henderson? Even if he says, right, I'm going to bring him off the bench for one of the games, he knows what he's going to do. Let's look at someone else. Why doesn't he go and look at, someone like Anthony Gordon, I think, who's crying out to be picked in that squad, but he'll still pick Jack Grealish, who can't get a game for Man City. And that's, for me, if I was an England fan, it would frustrate the hell out of us.
Yeah, it is frustrating. It is a strange situation.
And he still picked Calvin Phillips, who started his West Ham career so well.
Yeah. Lots of people praising John Anderson, says he calls it how it is. If they're poor, they're poor. If they're great, they're great. And if it's a penalty against Newcastle, he says it's a penalty against Newcastle. It's simple as that. And Chris Jagger says, for balance, Alan Shearer said it was definitely a penalty on Match of the Day. Chris, you're right, 100% he did. And I could see where he was coming from, but I think we all admit we've seen them given and we've seen them not given. What got me yesterday was how it was almost like it was not a penalty. It was not a penalty. It was not a penalty. It could be a penalty. Maybe it is. The whole game was commentated. They were still going on about the penalty. And then at the end of the game, I should just mute it. That's what I should do. I do that with WhatsApp groups, which are another bane of my life. But commentary on games with Newcastle is starting to become such a pain that I'm just, I may well just put some music on in the background if I ever have to sit through another day like that. But never mind, we will move on. Gary, you're right about this as well. It seems to me if any channel pick up on something negative with regards anything Newcastle, other channels join in and try to dig deeper. Yeah, it does happen. It's called doing it for clicks. And YouTubers are no different, Gary. Dubravka got the blame over here, Stu. Shouldn't have come. Batman would have got there. Botman, I think you maybe mean. But yeah, Simon, good point as well. Dubravka, yeah, somebody put it up, and it's Richie Southern, I think, put it up on Twitter. I haven't had time to watch the video, but I get where his video was coming from. I think he was retweeting it, something I put up, Mitch. And it was how much we've missed Nick Pope. Because, yeah, for all he made that big cock up, which cost him his place in the cup final, Pope's quickly off his line. Yesterday, Dubravka did that whole coming forward, and then he made the decision too late. And again, that led to that situation, Mitch.
No, that was the discussion around our table in Brooklyn last night, particularly at half time, was how much Pope was missed. I think we've not realised how Pope is much more commanding in the area than Dubravka. And I know he's had criticism for coming and punching, but at least when he comes, he gets his hand on the ball and everybody knows he's coming and he doesn't care who he clears out on the way. And so I think we've genuinely underestimated how much a role he plays in terms of command in the box. But also, he seems to know more often than not when to come, when to stay. And if you look at the two goals, Dubravka really, you're right, it was stop, start, stop, start. And I think he's, it beggars questions about his starting positions and things like that. And I think we're realising how good Pope's starting positions are, for example, as a result. He seems to be getting better the longer he's out.
Yeah, same with Willock.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, what's your thoughts on the whole Dubravka situation, Stu?
I think he's a very, very capable number two. And Pope's shown over the last couple of years that he is the best goalkeeper at the club. And I'm sure once he returns to full fitness, he'll be back in the team. And yeah, the only thing that you can say is, I think the same as everyone who watches Newcastle, when he comes out in his goal, you think, oh, it's heart and mouth to him, because you don't know if he's going to spoon it, or if he's going to miss it, or if he's going to slip it and try and head it and catch it or whatever. But what he does do, he gets there quickly. And it's just that it was the hesitancy shown yesterday by Dubravka. Is like he started going and he had that split second of doubt, and he slowed down and then stopped. Whereas if he kept going, he would have got the ball. But if you're not sure, stay where you are. Stay in your goal. That's what goalkeepers are there to do, protect. But I think Dubravka's also had a hard press, especially his first few games. But he's grown into it. But I believe that the defence are a lot more comfortable with Pope behind them, and they look a more solid unit. He does come out and claim the ball more. And if he does get off his line and come out the box, I mean, certainly, well, most of the time it doesn't go where he was wanting to kick it, but he gets there, and he makes sure he gets there. So is Dubravka the answer? No, but he's an able deputy. And the fact that he sat and waited and he's got his chance, he's taken it. And can you really say he's had a bad game? And it's very easy to be the one with the blame game. But if you break the season down, you mentioned at the top of the show there, Steve, that we're 5 points off where we were last season. We've had fantastic nights, trips away in Europe. We were one misplaced header and 1 minute away from a semi-final of the League Cup. We're sitting pretty in the FA Cup with a decent draw away from home, which if you can't get a good home draw, you get a decent one away, and we've got that. So that'll put us, if we win that one, we're back in another quarter-final. The season's not as bad as people want it to be, but I think, as I said earlier, I think some people aren't happy unless they're unhappy and they're looking for reasons to criticise and pull us down. But from that adversity, strength comes from it, doesn't it? And it looks like they are starting to pull together. And I just think Pope will get straight back in the team. I know I mentioned about Southgate, but I think most of us could pick our favourite Newcastle 11, and I think us three would get 3 different 11s, which is different to the England team. But Pope would start with, I think, every 99% of Newcastle fans would pick Pope, so of course he's going to be a miss. And then you can debate about every other position, but the spine of your team's the most important. And if you've got Pope, Botman, Bruno, and Isaac in your team, you can fill around it, and we'll always finish the top half with that spine. And it's just getting everyone fit, and we're due a bit of good luck for a change. So I still expect us a strong finish to the season.
Yeah, great idea by Jason. Put me Quadrophenia album on while muting the commentary and enjoy the match. Great idea, Jason. And I'm glad you enjoyed the film as well. Sam, you're right. A pinpoint pass did lead to the goal. Give credit where it's due. Yeah, I mean, and I saw Paul Toon before. I know you weren't having a pop at us. You're just saying, why not just pick on Burn full stop instead of changing to pick on Dubravka? But, I think we're defending Dan Burn on this show. I think from our perspective, Dan Burn seems to be getting it in the neck from everybody, on social media, and it's uncalled for. It's a collective, and Eddie Howe would say the same. We win games together, we lose games together. There's nobody to blame. Individual errors happen. It's all part of the game. But it's the way it is. Gary says why it was definitely not a penalty is because the Notts Forest player left his foot in when he could have easily hurdled over Dubravka's outstretched arm. That's probably why it wasn't given, Gary. He did look as if he went for it. It's one of them. It's open to interpretation. And the big problem about it, Gary, was that Anthony Taylor was so far away he couldn't make a decision, and that meant the VAR couldn't make the decision themselves either. That was it. It was as simple as that. So yeah, it's done and dusted. We got the 3 points, and that's that. Roger, good evening, says, has Botman lost a bit of pace after his injury, or is that what was the initial worry some had before the signing? I don't think Botman's lost anything. I think he's in a good space at the moment. Do you think he's lost pace, Mitch?
No, I don't think so. I think, has he lost pace? There's something slightly less reassuring about him. That if he's still playing with a thought on his knee, if his knee isn't 100%, and that might explain it. But I don't think he looks terribly different from the player that he was before the injury. I think what he is doing is adapting to these little subtle changes in the system that Eddie's bringing in. And that means his position's got to change a little bit. And I think that's what we saw yesterday. See, for me, there's a couple of times when he was closing in on players, and either Burn had certainly been left behind, and he was the one trying to make up the ground. But there did seem sometimes to be bigger gaps between Burn and Botman than I would have liked, and that's a positioning thing. There's no amount of pace unless you're an Olympic sprinter can get you out of that trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Botman has just got better and better with each game, Stu. I mean, it will have taken time with the injury that he had, but yeah, I think he's almost back to his best.
Yeah, he is. He's a big unit, isn't he? So he's never going to be nimble. But I don't think he was ever blessed with blistering pace to start with. But what he has got is fantastic positional strength, positioning, and that makes up for a lot of the pace. If you can judge where the ball's going to go and things like that. But he might be. I think now if he's had a good run of games, his confidence is getting up, and I don't think he's, like you say, he's not the fastest centre half, but he's certainly not the slowest. But I'm delighted with he plays for us, that's for certain. And he's only going to get better, isn't he? The stronger he gets and the more match fit he gets, is only going to benefit us as a team. So no problems with his pace. I don't think he had it to start with, but as I said, he's no slouch either.
Yeah. Stephen, I would imagine he went to hospital or he was being examined. Maybe that was the case why he wasn't on the photo. I don't think there's anything more suspicious than that, to be honest. Botman isn't as comfortable without Pope behind him for me, but he's still absolutely class, says Ian. Wilson seems to have a problem with his arm muscle from what I saw, House here. Yeah, there seems to be another injury.
He ended the game using his shirt like a sling, didn't he?
Yeah.
And they had three of the medical staff over to him at the end of the game. So there's obviously something's happened with his arm right at the, almost at the full-time whistle. So it'll be fascinating to see how that one works out.
Yeah, disappointing. If he's out again, hopefully Isaac will be back. We'll have got players coming back, which is positive. Cheers, Mitch. He's still Rolls Royce for me, says Roger. We need somebody with pace at the back four, always gets exposed by it. We're still having a good season, says DG Gazglow. All things considered, extra time, extra games with Europe and cup runs and all the injuries. And Doug says it worries me how we still can't deal with Route 1 against us. Yeah, we did get caught out with that yesterday, but it was a hell of a ball. There's no coincidence of us leaking goals and losing games ever since Pope got injured. Yeah, we do miss him, that's for certain. And Nick says, I think the answer to your question about the defence is Joe Linton. He does make a difference. We do miss him. Wilson hurt his arm wrestling on the byline, says El Jordio. And Botman's reading of the game is so good. John Terry never had pace, but was a top centre-half. Yeah, as long as you can read the game, Phil, that's the key. And Gary says, Botman was never blessed with pace. It's our Achilles heel at the back, lack of pace. Look at Botman and think how lucky we are and that we've attracted him here. And good evening to Alan. He says, honestly, I didn't think it was a penalty. Then with different people saying we got away with one, I have doubted myself. I've watched it 5 times and I still don't think it's a penalty. End of. It's a great 3 points. So lots of opinions coming in as well. Bill says, just need class midfielders in the team like Sandro Tonali and Joe Linton. Benny says the lack of pace in our back line is a trade-off for how good the centre-backs in Bernard in the air, and all 3 caused havoc in the Forest box for the first 2 goals last night. And Emmett says, didn't Wilson hurt his arm at the altercation right at the end? Yeah, definitely. We've just got to hope that it's not too serious. Just before we go into the ads, Barry asked a question and Tom asked a question before. Guys, would you spend any money on Morgan Gibbs-White? He looks class at times. And Tom asks about Elijah Adebayo. Again, played well against us the week before. There does seem to be a tendency amongst fans that when we do play games against players and have good games, we thoughts tend to go about potentially buying them or bringing them to the club. I mean, 2 names chucked into the mix there. Would you consider them good enough to play for Newcastle, Mitch?
Gibbs-White for me, 100%. And he's a nasty little shit as well. And I'm all for introducing a little bit of that shithousery as well, though he also played very well with Gordon in that under 21s tournament in the close season. And he has that sort of irritating mosquito-like temperament. And I'm sure he'd slot into an Eddie Howe team up-tempo, hard press, without much doubt. I thought he was class against in Boxing Day as well. It certainly wouldn't be a reactionary signing. I think it's somebody that could fit in our squad into 2 or 3 different roles. So yes, I would certainly have him. The other one, Adebayo, yeah, I mean, he was at times a little bit of a handful. Then he had the ball in the back of the net, but was offside. So yeah, it's a case of what can we do under FFP? What kind of quality players do we want? And how do we get the best out of what we have? And as somebody to shoulder some game time to take the pressure off Wilson and Isaac, that third striker that we've been talking about all season that we've never got, that would be it wouldn't be a bad signing. But Gibbs-White 100% I would have in a heartbeat.
Gibbs-White for you, Stu?
Definitely would have Gibbs-White. I think he'd fit into our style of play. I think he'd fit in with the dressing room. And I think he's a player he's liked by Eddie Howe. Adebayo, No, I don't think he suits our style. And there's a question there about defensive midfielders. I think we've already got one of the best defensive midfielders in the league, but he's injured, Joe Linton. I think he could play that, just win the tackles and have him as the pivot between Tonali and Bruno next season. To me, that you don't need to go and spend 50, 60 million on someone in that position. If he can just tweak his game a little bit and play with a bit more composure, but then you can have Gibb White. I would play him out on the right, Gordon on the left. He's up front. There's your team for next season. And get Kieran Tierney at left back and make me happy for once. That's how I would have it.
Yeah, you won't let that go, mate. You won't let that go. Brenton Diaz as a third striker would be ideal. I think it's just... Go on, Stu, what was that?
I said he'd be available in the summer. I keep cutting in now because there's a massive thunderstorm going on here at the minute. I was going to say something a bit risky, but it's not after 9 o'clock in the UK. So yeah. I'll keep it as it is. But it's raining, honestly, cats and dogs at the minute.
Yeah, you've got to keep an eye. Got to keep an eye out for the YouTube police as well, mate. Got to be careful. All right, here's the ads. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. Go to their website, skipsandbins.com. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com or telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Go to their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to United Group Travel. Go to their website, unitedgrouptravel.com. Email info@unitedgrouptravel.com or phone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. They're a local company from Morpeth and there are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. Big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button under the video. Click the thumb up to like the video and click share to share to your social media. If you want to help the channel financially, you can pay a one-off £25 fee. You get a cup, a scarf, a pen and a membership card and entry into the NUFC Matters monthly draw. Email john@nufcmatters.com for more details, or if you've got a smartphone, scan the QR code now and it takes you straight to the membership pack. We also support the food bank on this channel. Go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and you'll find the matchday bucket. You can make a donation virtually today. You can also find us on iTunes, Spotify and other podcast providers. We also do events during the year. NUFC Matters Live will be at the O2 City Hall on Friday the 2nd of August for an evening with Rob Lee, one night in Antwerp. Tickets start at £15 and you can get them from ticketmaster.co.uk. An evening with the entertainers takes place on Friday the 24th of January 2025 at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House in Newcastle. Telephone 0844 249 1000 or visit the website tynetheatreandoperahouse.uk to buy tickets today. You can also catch me on the North East Footy Breakfast Show live on Toon Radio weekdays 7 till 9 a.m. on DAB, smart speakers and the toonuk.com. Okay, welcome back to NUFC Matters. It is the professionals. Still got 45 minutes of the show. If you've got any questions, get them in. We'll try to get one or two done. But just want to talk about the ground. I mean, the feasibility ground, Mitch, the feasibility test for the ground, etc. I mean, they must have made some progress. I know these things take time. Are you hearing any news or any developments on that at this moment in time?
I still think it's all been lip service from day one, mate. And I think they know exactly what they want to do. And I think a lot of the times it's just taking time to get people's heads around certain options. I mean, we've talked about this for a long time because of the involvement some of us have had in other projects over time. And we've had a look at options and had people do stuff for very kindly pro bono just out of the love of football, trying to do things. I think everybody would be delighted to see Newcastle United stay at St James's Park in some way, shape or form. And I personally think from the noises that the ownership have made over the last 18 months, that would be their preferred option. With the big but, what the heck do we do while we're doing whatever we want to do to St James's Park? I think we can do anything we want to do to St James's Park in terms of Leazes Terrace and getting permissions from the council and other things aside. It's a different era to when Sir John Hall made his proposals. It's a council that's strapped for cash and wants to use and really needs to use all the strategic partners they can gather to generate cash and keep cash in the city. And losing Newcastle United from the city centre would be suicide. But again, it comes back to how do we manage a ground redevelopment and also play Premier League games when we don't have the option of what Spurs had, say, and let's go and use Wembley for a season. There's nothing like that on my doorstep. I think using the Stadium of Light would be a non-starter. Their reaction to just having one of the bars decorated briefly, I think, should tell you everything about what that would be as an option. So I think the one thing that does keep popping up, and I've got to admit, I initially thought it was bullshit, but the more I hear and the more I understand is the concept of a temporary stadium along the lines of the ground that was built in Qatar for the World Cup with shipping containers, etc. Is one that might have legs, and the only question is where do you put it? Because in terms of a cost-effective way to have a ground with a decent capacity in a short period of time, I believe the one in Qatar was done and completed within 9 months. Might actually be, ironically, one of the cheapest ways of doing it. You knock that up somewhere, let's say down by the arena, just to use an example, where there's a brownfield site, you could stick something like that in, get that up and running, use that for however many months we need to, and then do to St James's whatever we need to do, which is probably relocate the pitch diagonally, move up into Leazes Park a little bit, take advantage of maybe even keeping the back end of the east stand where it is and being able to manipulate that from there. But a combination of those two things, I think, would give the ideal solution for what the club would like, for what the fans would like, for what the city council would like. And that's, where I'm at the moment of thinking, well, is this the way they're going to go? I would also be interested to see if any of those options could be an interesting way to fold stuff into sustainability rules, because they seem to swap and change their mind on whether infrastructure projects can be taken an allowance for under sustainability rules or not. And so again, is there a clever way that we can eke out more from a FFP/PSR point of view by doing something very smart like that? I think the club would be all for that as well. I don't think any option will be instantly dismissed, but I genuinely believe the club know what they want to do. And if that is the case, pack the lip service in and just get on with it.
What's your thoughts, Stu? Are we going to go down that kind of route that Mitch is talking about?
Well, I'm the point of this evening. I think you deliver it with panache, aplomb, and profession. That there's, how is it you? There's no our bus, just friends you haven't met yet. You deliver it perfectly, and I think Mr. Bayer should leave you alone. I do laugh every time. You say it with so much meaning as well. Now, but regarding the stadium, we've talked quite a lot, and I've got no doubt at all in my mind that the stadium, the preferable one would be move it up a bit into Leazes Park, so it'll still be have a Gallagher end, you still have a Leazes end. A big question that Mitch asked and knows, where do we play games in the meantime? You know, some and then leave one stand, because there's going to have to be a reduced some shape or form. But that is what's been happening at the club, and go down the particular. It's like creating problems. If you create enough problems, then wow, we found a solution, aren't you a genius? That's what I think's happening. And I wouldn't be surprised to, you know, it's a solution where, look, you want to go, and they're at pains to keep saying the buy mags are going over for the West Ham game, Mitch. The West Ham game, there's 25 mags, I believe. And that's the sort of thing we know.
We're losing it. We're losing it. I've tried to let it go, Stu, but we're losing you again with a storm, mate. So it's unfortunate. I think that's why Mitch was looking a bit puzzled. So I'm trying.
Yeah, couldn't follow along.
I'm trying not to butt in, but
I'll come back in.
Yeah, it's probably the best, mate. Yeah, moving on from that, we got the gist of what Stu was trying to say. He was essentially battling against the storm and the internet there, but agreeing with Mitch to a degree. But yeah, look, a temporary stadium, as DJ Gazglow says, is built while we redevelop St James's. I think that would be a good idea. Can we not build a ground for the lasses and play there while St James's Park gets done up? I don't think we'll fill 60,000, Barry.
Yeah, but what you do with that then temporary ground, in inverted commas, would be interesting, because there's another facility in the city under the ownership of Newcastle United that could do concerts, that could do women's football. If PIF are interested in buying the rugby club, play the rugby there. There's a lot of things you could do with another facility like that. Mm-hmm. And however, that would then put a lot of pressure on Gateshead Stadium, I think. But this is the kind of thing that I think, if we look at where we want to go and how we want to make money as a club, a second facility under the ownership of Newcastle United could be an interesting proposition longer term as well. So there'd be lots of, you might call it a temporary ground for the first team, but not necessarily a temporary ground. Other people could be using that. And I think that we've only really just skimmed the surface of that. There's a lot more you could dig into. I suspect Mr. Hastie's off sitting writing a few words down to himself once he's seen this, because I know what he's like. He'll probably come back with a list of 1,000,001 things that could be done with the second stadium in Newcastle, because you know what he's like. But all of this makes sense. You know, it's that planning ahead and looking at the bigger picture that I think these owners will be constantly doing for the benefit of Newcastle United, because we've got to find innovative ways around the sustainability stuff. Yeah,
it's a good point. Okay, I got about 25 minutes left. Stu clearly having big issues with his internet. It's a big storm over rain.
That's on the way here for first thing in the morning.
Is it?
Aye, and the roads don't cope with bad weather out here very well, and there's literally the government officers here have gone into working from home mode for tomorrow and Tuesday.
Wow. Tom Dixon says, great to hear Ian Mearns talking in the comments about the kickoff times for Newcastle fans for travelling. Hopefully the Premier League will do something. It was good to hear that. And of course, they won't, Mitch.
No, they won't, unfortunately. Keep coming back to it. And Ian, bless him, carries that passionately as a football fan, as we know him very well, because we've spent plenty of time with him on nufc matters in the past. And always good to hear his input and have his backing. But with Ian, unfortunately, will the Premier League do anything? No. Television hold all the cards because they hold all the money. And as it ever was, it's funny, Steve and I were talking about something last week, and it made me dig through an old email address looking for some emails. And while I was in there, I tried to find the one we got from the Premier League when we were at the Trust talking about the Plymouth kickoff shift. Didn't find it in the end, and I wish I had now, because it's come up in a couple of shows over the last couple of weeks. But basically, that letter said, television say what they want to do and we do it. Boom. That pretty much is it. And that's they'll give you a different answer now, but it's the same answer, just with flowery words around it.
Buy the Stadium of Light, use it for a season while St James's Park is developed, then lease it to the Mackhams for the rest of time. Decent investment. Rent reviews every 2 years. Welcome back, Stu. Did you want to finish up on your stadium stuff?
The crux of what I was saying was, it was like creating problems and then coming up with a solution, and you end up being a genius. That was just the main part of it, and I think this is why the pushing for let's just leave the tickets thing alone. But there's a lot of people who now want to get in, who can't get in. There's people getting in who people think shouldn't, and from there, here's your solution. We're going to get a bigger stadium so everyone can get in. Try and make everyone happy. But most will make themselves happy because they'll get the stadium that they want and they'll get the revenue that they need. So that's it. There was a comment on earlier as well, saying if you go back to when we first started supporting Newcastle, look at St James's Park now to then. It's only the grass that's the same, isn't it? Well, even that's been relayed a few times as well. So it's a bit like Trigger's brush. So if we have to move, and it's not a Mike Ashley trying to move us or a Gordon McKee trying to move us. These are people who are moving us for the benefit of the club, the benefit of the city, and it will put us on the global map, footballing wise. And I'm sure they will. The phrase that we've coined quite a lot here is build a big shiny new stadium. And the only question I can think of is where you're going to play whilst this is getting built.
Yeah, that's the big question. But I'm sure we will. I'm sure we'll hear from the club in due course. Obviously, feasibility studies and all that will be coming to an end. Let's move back to football. There was a question from Alan Thompson. He says, question, lads, 14 games to go. Where will we finish? For me, I think 7th. We're playing badly. I will change my mind if we get anything against Arsenal, but that'll still be good with all the injuries. Alan, I think we'll finish 6th. I genuinely still think we've got a good chance of winning the FA Cup, and I'm not going to be turned away from anything like that. There's a saying goes, if you win when you're playing badly, then, you've got to be happy. We've just come off the back. We couldn't win an away game for love nor money. We've just gone to Sunderland, dispatched them 3-0. We've just beaten Fulham in the FA Cup. We've just beaten Villa on their own patch, and now we've beaten Forest. The only bad game amongst all of that was a 4-4 draw against Luton, where we were 4-2 down, and we managed to get a point. We're not playing badly. We're conceding goals. We're conceding more goals than we were last season. But there's a reason for that, because players are playing, and they're not fully fit, because we haven't had the players available. We can't get a regular formation or team, but we're still finding a way. We're only 5 points away from where we were last season. And if we beat Bournemouth next weekend at home, and depending on the other results, things could look even better next week. So I'll go 6th, and I'll go for a good run to the FA Cup. I'm going to predict the final. Will we win it? who knows? But I think our season is well and truly going to come to life, and the fact we've got another week between now and Bournemouth is going to help us massively. Mitch, what's your feelings?
I'll say 5th, because we've got a really good run of games. We've got so many of the so-called harder games out of the way. And the point I was going to make, you've just made, we're 5 points away from where we were at the same stage last season, and yet we're playing badly. That's not bad. And if we turn into a run of form like we know we can, we've proved it, we've done it already. There's going to be a couple of those teams ahead of us, and there may even be one in the Champions League places looking over their shoulder with sweaty palms thinking, good God, these are coming. And I think that's that's the kind of thoughts we'd have to be putting into other teams' heads. Shit, these are on a roll and they're coming for me. Because if that's us playing badly, let's see what happens when we start playing well again. Because class is permanent, form's temporary.
Yeah, people got interrupted by an advert. Yeah, I think we'll finish 6th and we'll get to the FA Cup final. Will we win it? I don't know. Stu, what about you?
I'm with Mitch. I think we can get as high as 5th. We've broke the back of the hard fixtures. I think the toughest one we've got left is Arsenal away. We've got players scheduled to come back at the right time. Hopefully, Bruno can keep himself away from a yellow card for a bit longer until we have a fuller complement of players. And I think they've got the bit between the teeth now. As you say, win next week. If you look at this 5 points off where we were, we can't keep comparing last year to the year before, etc. But Luton home and away, there's your 5 points that we've missed out on. That's how close it's been, and we've never had an injury crisis like this in the 40-odd years I've supported Newcastle. And it's not just a niggle here or there. There's been people who've broken backs and everything, haven't they? Dislocated shoulders. There's been really serious injuries, and we don't have Europe. And Villa seem to be in free fall. Their capitulation seems to be, I think it's marvellous to watch from all the gloating that they've got, because they've made a rivalry with us. Because I think more for what we set last year, we're the new target for people who aren't in the recognised top 6, but I think the top 3 are too far ahead now. But I think on our day, when we showed it last season, we can give Tottenham a howking. And there's no reason why we can't beat them at home. So 42 points to play for. If we can get 30 of those points, that'll put one on 66. That'll be enough for at least 5th, I would say.
Okay, let's talk Bruno. While Mitch is off screen, I'll come to you first, Stu. And Bruno, yeah. I mean, he put his fingers in his ears like he normally does with celebrations. He was asked why he does that, and it was to block out the negativity, I guess, is the message I got from him, and that he's going nowhere. I thought it was fantastic to hear him say that, Stu, that he's committed to Newcastle United. He said it a few times in press interviews, but to hear him say it, last night on TV in an interview with Jamie Redknapp, who we didn't have a clue who he was when he introduced himself on Sky and went, "I'm Jamie. Hi, Bruno. It's me, Jamie Redknapp," and he just went like that. He wasn't impressed at all, which went down great on Tyne's side. But yeah, I loved that last night. More, very committed to the club. And great to hear it, from his own mouth.
Bruno is committed. There's no doubt about that. He's fell in love with the area. His family's settled. As we know, his parents are over more often than they're in Brazil. His children were born here. So he sees himself as an adopted Geordie. And yes, he's got ambitions. He said that the day he walked into the club and he was laughed at, wasn't he? He says, "I want to play Champions League football with this club." Didn't think it'd happen as quick as it did. But I think if we finish the season with the flourish that we're expecting to, we're hoping to have, then that'll be enough to keep him at least for next year, and then we can kick on with a good splash of cash in the summer and give him, not just him, but the top players, show them that we have got the ambition and give them a squad that is capable of challenging on consistently and can handle injuries.
Yeah, Bruno committed 100%, Mitch. It was great to hear that last night.
Very much so, and to see a certain upbeat cheekiness in the way he was, and I think Mark's absolutely right. That was more like the Bruno that we're known to see. There certainly wasn't any of the frustrated Bruno running around trying to make silly tackles and getting wound up. And I thought he took his second goal spectacularly. I think that touch and shot was real top draw stuff. I also like how he referenced Tyndall in some of the post-match stuff with regards to the goal from the set piece. And the fact that they found a system which releases him just a little further forward and allow him the freedom of the pitch to express himself where he causes damage. Because he is a player that you need to be doing that in the attacking third of the pitch. Because he can pop up and score a goal, because his work rate means he's going to intercept the ball high up through the press. But also then he can kind of really do something special when he's given the time and the space to do so. And anybody with any doubts about how happy he is or isn't to be here, look at the smile on his face throughout the interviews and look at how happy he seems to be in terms of just the presence around the team and the interaction with his management and the actual interaction with the fans. And I think that's a player that's going nowhere other than to the top of Newcastle United.
Yeah, very positive. Great stuff. Lots of comments about it as well. Bruno is mint. He makes my all-time 11 already. Big shout there from Blue Rhythm Boy. Alan says, where do you rate him in Newcastle's history? I still think it's a bit early, to do it. I think once a player goes, it's when you can start rating him. But he's certainly climbing the ladder, I would say. There's no doubt about it. And Benny says, Bruno's clearly committed. How committed he'll be if or when Real Madrid meet the release clause that his agent insisted was in his new deal will be interesting. It is an interesting times. El Giorgio says, interesting Bruno's explanation about his celebration fingers and ears. Haven't read much about him leaving lately, but I wish footballers would stay off social media like Eddie. Phil Hook says, what does everyone think about the Premier League vote on third-party transactions and subsequent rumoured legal challenges? Yeah, Premier League met this week. Interesting to see who abstained and who voted. Mitch, that was an interesting one.
Yeah. And how they keep exposing things like we discussed on Friday night. They keep exposing things that make the Premier League look more and more like a multi-million-pound business run like an old boys club. And it cannot work like that anymore. Legal challenges are going to be inevitable. They know there's legal challenges always around the corner. It's why they referred the Everton situation to an independent commission, even though they should. Or they could and probably should have just dealt with it themselves. They obviously have some doubts over certain things from a legal aspect, and therefore using an independent commission protects the Premier League a little bit. With regards to the third-party transactions, I think we've always played it smart. I think we've pitched them a really clever point, whereby even under further scrutiny, they can't be criticised too much, if at all. It's certainly going to affect teams like Man City. Funny though, Man City talking about potentially legal action when it's the last thing they want to talk about when it comes to other things with the Premier League at the minute. It's funny how that's a one-way street in terms of how quickly they want their legal issues to be dealt with. But that is as ever was. The clubs that have sustained, I still find it odd that the premise is that you need 14 votes, but if there's any abstentions, then you need 2/3 of the votes that are cast, which basically does not recognise an abstention as a vote, which it should be. And secondly, how do we get where it's exactly the right amount with 2 abstentions during that vote? And what's in it for Palace and Burnley? Palace's chairman's got plenty to say for himself. And yet suddenly when he's asked to put his money where his mouth is, no, it's nothing to do with me. That's not a fight I want to get involved in. I'll just abstain from this. Well, really? Yet you've got plenty to say about everything else, mate, and every other club. And I don't get what's potentially in it or not for Burnley to be abstaining in that situation. Who are they trying not to upset? Have they got a tacit agreement with someone that they were going to abstain? It certainly, well, as you can probably guess, raises more questions for me than it gives us any kind of answers, and will be subject to further discussion down the line, I'm quite sure.
Thoughts on the Premier League meeting this week, Stu?
They seem to be trying to rush decisions through in fear of what Newcastle might do, not what they are doing.
Yeah.
And we can look at it with our black and white rose-tinted specs on and think, oh, the all infamy, they've all got it infamy. But it's genuine fear. And I don't think Saudi is, or the PIF, is a problem with the Premier League. They've never broke any rules. They've done everything by the book. And the biggest danger to the Premier League is the American influence and how it's been exerted on other clubs. And it's not a case of if now, it's when there's going to be legal challenges. And there will be, because there's so many different routes you can go down. You've got the anti-competitiveness, you've got the restriction of trade, you've got the collusion, the corruption, the cartel behaviour. There's so much that's built up, and I'm sure our lawyers will have a huge dossier ready to put it down and say, right, enough's enough now. We're going to take you on. But at the moment, the smiling, waving and nodding and not rocking any boats whatsoever. And it's just watching everyone else kick up a fuss. And it's, I think, in a way, what they've done is light the blue touch paper, because when it comes to it, they've got more money than the rest of them put together. So if some people get their noses put out, right, let Man City argue with them then. Let someone else take the court case. And if financial player gets dropped, it still has an effect on Europe, unless it gets cleared from Europe as well. But for me, there's going to be a Bosman-style change, a decision of that sort of magnitude, where I still can't understand if you buy a business and you've got money to improve it, you're not allowed to because someone else who has another business says you can't. Because their business is bigger, we don't want you catching us up. So what we'll do is we'll keep tinkering with the rules. So we'll always have more money to spend than you. Doesn't matter how much money you've got, we'll always have more money than you. How can that be fair? That's not what sport's about. But on the flip side of that, it's not about someone going out and spending half a billion every window. But we haven't shown any indication of doing that either. They're looking for long-term sustainable growth with Newcastle, and that's what they'll do it, because that's what you do with business. You can put money into business and get great rewards, but greed then starts killing everything. You see it with, even give it a familiar field, Steve. If you see the nightclubs back home, when a new one would open up, it would get busy, and it was the place to be. And then what happens? The owners go greedy, start putting the prices up, and people go elsewhere. And that's the Premier League's going to do exactly the same. People will start voting with their feet, because it's not what it's meant to be. And I'm happy that the clubs didn't spend the money, because that has to be a wake-up call to the league. You're telling us if we spend the money, you're going to dock us points, which could cost some clubs their existence. And if we don't spend the money, then why would the TV people weigh the money in? So they're caught in between, and I think all they're trying to do is appease certain clubs. And I wouldn't say all the big six, quite clearly, not all the big six, but they're trying to appease certain clubs. And if I'm not mistaken, it was with Masters, it was Liverpool and Man United that interviewed him and recommended him for appointment. How can that be? That's only 10% of the Premier League shares. They get 5% each. How can 10% decide what happens to the rest of the 90 and who runs it? So I think there's a lot behind the scenes where they'll have something on him, he'll have something on them, and the pack of cards will come down. And I think it'll be within this year. There'll be a big legal challenge, and Newcastle will just walk through the door in this weather, swinging their umbrella, and just say, right, welcome to the real world. This is how we're going to do business now. Move along. The big boys are coming through, and that'll just set us up for a long, long time, for the rest of our lives anyway.
Yeah, interesting. Kevin Keegan was the best signing in my lifetime, says George. Chelsea chairman, back Bruce Buck, American pointed masters. Interesting. We touched on that one, John, earlier on, but I think we all feel like Newcastle will qualify for Europe. Yes, 100%. El Jordio, another interesting one. Question: can we start putting Fabian Schär into the Newcastle Legends bracket? Going on for 6 years here and has been consistent throughout and seems to get better with age. I tell you what, Mitch, he's got to be in there, as somebody suggested in the chat before, about almost like on not quite par for par with Rob Lee, his best pound for pound signing.
Yeah, he wouldn't go in as a legend, but he certainly would go into the best pound for pound 11. You cannot argue with that. And he's actually, in his time at Newcastle United, in the last 18 months in particular, seems to have got better. He seemed to be able to have, whether it's his fitness, whether he's picked up on something from Howe, or a little bit of both, don't know, but he seems to have got better. I think he's more reliable as a defender, which he didn't have necessarily when he first came. So, yeah, I mean, he certainly, for me, would go into a best pound for pound 11. I've got no doubt about that. Legend, time will tell.
Shoot.
He'd be a legend if he scores the winner in the FA Cup against Klopp's Liverpool in his last game.
Absolutely, yes.
Then he'd be a legend. But I've touched on this in one of the earlier shows. For me, I think he's been our most consistent player of the season. He's really, I think, he can count on one hand how many mistakes he's made. And follow on from what Mitch said there, yeah, he's played much better football. He's always been able to pick a pass, but his consistency level is a lot higher now. And I just think he's been empowered. You know, it's similar to what Bobby Robson said to Shearer. You know, we're going to build a team around you, the best striker in the league, go out and prove it. And I think he's going out there thinking he's one of the best in the league, if not in his own head, the best centre half in the league. And he's just brimming with confidence. And long way considering, but he's at age where he can't be playing twice a week. So I'm sure we will keep him for next year because he's just signed a contract extension. But on the premise that we'll be in European football next year, he's not going to be able to get through 50 games at the level he is this season. And he's been consistent for us through all the injuries. He's been one of our shining lights. So pound for pound, you still say Rob Lee's far ahead because it's less money. I know it's a different age, but what Rob Lee did for us, the service he gave over the time, and he scored at Wembley. So let's see if Shaw can do that. Then we can start discussing if he's a legend or not. But for me, him and Anthony Gordon have been the best two players, the standout players of the season for us.
Yeah, okay. We did have another question from Paul Patterson. He says, what are the guys' most important areas for strengthening in the summer? Centre forward, left back, defensive midfielder for me. That's if we keep everyone there already. It's $1 million question, and it's not one we can answer really at the moment. I don't think. I could pluck things out the sky, but I think we need to know how much we can spend, Paul. I'd love to see a striker that can play a full season or nigh on a full season without, collapsing on the ground with various ailments and getting off. I mean, we've just been unlucky. Two guys who can put the ball in the back of the net, yet neither one can, seems to get a run of games together this season. Is it just this season? Is there an issue? Eddie Howe admitted at his press conference at the weekend, which I thought was brave of him to say that, where to blame. He pointed at the gym. Potentially could be stuff that they've been doing in the gym. Who knows? But yeah, I would say a new centre forward. I think we do need to improve the goalkeeping situation, and I would certainly look to bring in another defender, potentially a left back. If Shaw's going to stay another season, which it looks like he is, can we get through another season with the centre half cover that we've got? Are we going to keep a hold of Lascelles? Are we going to keep Botman and Byrne? Is he going to continue to play Byrne at left back? There's lots of questions. Left back is the area you would need to improve. Although Tino can play there, he's not left-footed. So we've got those kind of debates going on. Is he going to go through a season with Dubravka and Pope again? And we can't, and we are hampered by FFP. So are any of the youngsters who come in going to be able to take the next step up? Are we going to be able to see Yankuba Minte setting foot on the pitch in the first team next season? You know, got off to a good start. Now you're hearing people saying, oh, well, you know, the manager's shouting at him. It's not as good now. Lots of questions. Tonali's back next season. That's a big plus. Going to be able to train in pre-season, but can't play for the first couple of weeks of the season. He's going to be back. It's going to be like a proverbial new signing. But, you know, we've got to hope we'll get a better run with injuries, and we've got to hope we can invest. But goal scorer, yes. Goalkeeper for me, yes. And a defender. I think that's your minimum 3 in the summer. And depending on who goes out, you know, of course, there could be players leave. So it's a hard one, Paul, because we're not even anywhere near the end of the season yet. But it's a hard one to call. But theoretically, at the moment, those are the 3 areas I would strengthen. What about you, Mitch?
Depth is what we need. We need more depth. I think we'll see in the summer a large churn of players. I think we'll see quite a few out and a few in. We might not necessarily increase total numbers, but what I think we will see is an improvement in the quality of the depth of the squad. So we don't have just 14 or 15 that are at that peak level. It's more like 20. And how they do that, not really sure. Though I do think we're going to find, with all the new sponsorship deals and things in place, that hopefully we're not as restricted as we might think we might be. But that's what I want to see is depth. It's not just a case of, oh, well, sign 1, 2, 3 players and that'll sort it out. Yes, it might, but it doesn't solve the problem of depth that we've had exposed by the odd number of injuries that we've had.
Yeah, a lot of people shouting Hall's name. We surely have got to assume that Hall will play far more next season. What's the long-term plan with Hall? Now, that's a question. Hopefully the new person in the physio department has a major investigation. But yeah, transfers for next season. Paul Patterson's chipped in. He goes, thanks, guys, for what it's worth. Miley could have saved us 40 million. Good point, Paul. But yeah, Stu, thoughts on you know, it's a long way off, but what do you think?
I think with Miley and Anderson, they'll probably save us 70 to 80 million. So once they're both fitting up and running. But for me, I've been consistent throughout the season. The areas that we need to improve on is left back. Even though we've got a load of left backs, we need a top quality left back. We need a top quality right winger. We clearly need cover up front. And for me, I still think we'll be going to get a centre half off the Jared Branthwaite from Everton. I think that's who they've got their eye on. And I don't think we're that far away. When we're seeing, Mitch said there, we need depth in the squad. We do, but we've got the depth. They're just playing for us at the moment. So when you're bringing these types of players in, you'll have the Longstaffs, the Megaleys, etc. These will become substitutes, not starters. Dan Byrne, another one for example. And you're bringing in not high earners, because they will, if they're good, they'll earn high money anyway. But top quality players, already tried and tested. For me, someone like Rafinha on the right. He proved he can play the Premier League. He's not that happy at Barcelona. They're not happy with him. They need to get some money in. A deal could be done there. So if you've got him there, and I'll keep banging the Kieran Tierney drum until he signs for someone else. But he's only on loan at Sociedad. He's coming back into fitness again. And of course, he's not going to play 50, 60 games because he's about to get injured. But look at the injuries we've had already. But if you've got someone like that there, we can then start getting rid of Lewis, who's at Watford, getting money in for him, getting money in for Matt Target, and this is without signing Hall. You know, we've got cover in these places. What we need to do is add to the starting 11, and that's what makes the squad better. And Mitch was bang on the money there. There'll be a lot of people leaving. Some will be sold. And although I said $250 million last week, I still think we'll spend over 200 million in the summer. But that might not be a net spend, but I'm sure that'll be our gross spend.
Okay, I got about 5 minutes left. Bye, Jason. Thanks for tuning in. Do you think we'll keep Minty next season or put him out on loan again, Mitch, says Tom?
Depends what the feedback is from Feyenoord and from the player, and once everybody's sat down at the end of the season. I know somebody seemed to be running almost an assassination piece on him over the weekend about him being screamed at by the bench for 30 minutes during a game or what have you. All seems very odd. Can't say I've seen enough of him other than highlights from certain games. I think he'll probably pose an interesting question to how to say, right, am I hanging around here, or are you having us out on loan again? Because he certainly seemed to start like a rocket, and then he seems to have dropped off since then. But that's the nature of younger players, and that's why they're out on loan to learn and experience all of these things. So will we keep him? Eddie's call. Wouldn't surprise us if he doesn't.
Yeah, I'd be surprised as well, to be honest. It's, you know, it's not the greatest of leagues, Stews, is it? The Dutch league.
No, it's not, but it's a good way of him finding his feet. You've got to remember he's only a Ben, and he will be inconsistent. Unless the real top class, like how Rooney come on this scene and was innocently great and stayed that way. Shearer was the same. You know, he's not going to be in that bracket. But remember, we paid $7 million for him. So I think they'll bring him back in the summer. They'll have a look at him pre-season. And if they don't think he's going to be getting the game time, or he might even ask for more game time and go out on loan, send him on loan again. And if he has an impact like he did have in the first half of the season, next year for someone else, and then carries on a bit longer, that $7 million becomes $15 million, which then goes back into our pot for financial fair play, if that's still a thing next season. So there's many permutations you can go with it, but he has all the potential in the world. So let's not put all the pressure on his shoulders either. I think there'll be more younger signings, and the need to for the development of the club in general, not just the first team. But someone like Minty, he could come in, take it to like a duck to water, couldn't he? He could come in and say, right, I'm going to make this right wing place my own and dazzle everyone. But I just think what's expected of the wingers from Eddie Howe, I don't think he'll be mature enough for that just yet. So the likelihood is he'll come and say hello to everyone in the summer, have a kick about for a few weeks, and then he'll be formed out to another league.
Fantastic show again. Thanks to Mitch and the Mitchell brothers. Right said Fred. Great crowd in the chat as ever with great questions, comments. Hit the folks. How we are the lads. Thank you, Muzza, and thanks for all the moderators. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Over 500 watching tonight, which is great. And we will announce the end of season due, which is going to be in the summer. I'll announce that tomorrow night on the fans forum, which will be 6 o'clock. I think we're going to do 90 minutes tomorrow. Too much for the lads to talk about in an hour. So I think we're going to do 90 minutes on a Monday. But as promised, I will play out with the Long Sands, which I did manage to find. I promised you that I would find the video, and it is the song everyone says. Well, it's been our theme tune for many years now since we started the show, and it's Worlds Collide. You can get it on the first album, Meet Me in Spanish City. But thanks to Mitch, thanks to Stu, thanks to you, and we'll play out with this. I'll see you tomorrow night. Take care, guys.
Cheers
everyone. Cheers, mate.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all believe. And it feels alright where the worlds collide. Manipulation stands to make us break. What time you said is coming over you. You wish it upon a star. You wish it on a star. You are. working on the world's machine. Because I want it more than anyone can dream. You look back and it's all in the past. You tell me how you live by all the things you do. Well, you can be yourself, but maybe I'm not you.
And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all believe. And it feels alright when the worlds collide. Manipulation stands to make us brave.
What's that you said is coming over you? You're wishing upon a star. You're wishing it on a star. You are, you are, you are. What's that you said you want control of me? It's something that you should learn. When the cards are dealt, I run you burn. What's that you said is coming over you? You're wishing upon a star. You're wishing it on a star. You are, you are, you are. What's that you said you want control of me? It's something that you should learn. When the cards are dealt, I run.